But every difficult situation obviously allows us to grow beyond routine. So as an airport, we focused on three things, and the primary focus was on connectivity to help all our supply chain partners and host partners who are on this call. So what we focused is that to ensure that key routes for trade stayed connected with our airport. So up to March, we had about 47 airlines flying out of our airport, connecting to 25 direct destinations, 70 domestic destinations. Now, and as I said, for pharmaceutical, those 25 international destinations, and for transshipment, those domestic destinations played quite a vital role. Interestingly, in the pandemic environment, we saw some new routes coming in. Right, we had Air India flying to San Francisco directly from Bangalore. We had Japan Airlines that started off. So if you've been following the news, we've had United and American, going to start flight out of Bangalore next coming months. So connectivity was our primary focus area to ensure the cold chain from an airport perspective remained resilient. Two was the consistency of service. The cargo terminals at the airport are GDP compliant, like most other terminals are in the country and across the world. But being GDP compliant was not sufficient enough. The service for pharmaceutical was tracked end to end, right, and ensure that consistency of service remained an important component. The third part is obviously collaboration, and I know there's a separate session on that next. But in an era where the customer is king and the customer has many options, collaboration was a primary focus area for us as an airport. We ensured that the pharmaceutical supply chain remain resilient. Just to share with you, some partners like Envirotainer and Vacutech, which is on the call, started to use Bangalore Airport more actively, set up a larger base of containers, etc., to the airport, right? And that collaboration with the ecosystem has helped the supply chain remain resilient. Interestingly, our share of pharmaceutical exports and imports went up significantly in the pandemic, right? And a lot of other airports across the world have done that. So focus for an airport, as I said, as an infrastructure provider, was connectivity. That was primary for us. On the point that you raised on sustainability, as an airport, we're quite passionate about the area of sustainability. There are 5 focus areas that we focus on, and the panel can deliberate on that. Most partners would be doing something in their own areas. We focus on water, energy, environment, waste, and ecological management. Ecological management, because as a 4,000-acre campus, we have a variety of birds, insects, trees, which other parts of the ecosystem don't have. Right? As an airport, we were water neutral and energy neutral from 2020 onwards, which you've just spoken about. As part of waste management, we probably might become the first airport in the country, and partners could use us. We're going to have a solid waste management plant on campus, right? So any waste, it could be packing material, etc., that gets generated on campus is disposed from the campus itself. So see, these are some key steps that we're taking to ensure that as a supply chain partner, as an airport and an infrastructure provider, we do a bit to society and ensure the supply chain from our airport and the community remains resilient.
Thank you, Prateek. I can say it was quite an elaborative the response, and we really appreciate the efforts, the Go Green efforts of the Bangalore Airport, because it's something which can be learned by the other airports, and they can also start working towards it, so that we have a safe world to live in. As you mentioned in the first part of the question, that the connectivity was something a key during the pandemic, where you had the flights, the number of flights who were transferred and were coming into the Bangalore Airport, and you had a flexibility to choose the right route. So flexibility on the route as well has probably helped you. So thank you, Pradeep, for the good insights. My next question is to Mr. Vijay Bhaskar, Manufacturing and Supply Chain Lead, Pfizer Healthcare India Private Limited. Dear sir, you come from a very rich and vast experience in the field of pharmaceutical, right from manufacturing to supply chain. Industry has come a long way understanding the sensitivity of pharmaceutical during the transit. Can you throw some light on the progress made on the cold chain logistics and transportation of pharmaceutical, which are the key areas where you feel some improvement needs to be made, and what are the success stories? Over to you, sir.
Uh, Good afternoon. Am I audible, Mr. Rita?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me onto the panel. Also, welcome to all of you. Um, Let me just try to bring a little bit of connectivity to what exactly we do from a product is taken out from our manufacturing sites. Uh, Before that, let me also connect to Unbroken Cold Chain. I think the term unbroken cold chain, the industry where I've worked, the products which we have dealt with, I know we're talking about the temperatures, but we have a big spectrum of the temperatures. So when we are developing the product, certainly we'll have to take all those into consideration. And also in the, like you rightly mentioned, the last few years, so they very much increase in the uh, research and development where we see multiple new medicines are coming out. The demand for the cold chain logistics has certainly increased a lot. While we are designing the packaging in our organizations, it's not only the temperature, like you rightly mentioned, what do we do to take leverage of the cutting edge technologies to reduce the waste and our responsibility towards the mother earth. These are all the factors those are considered from the research and development team and without compromising on the quality because that's the primary most important thing. If you ask me what is the first priority, product needs to be delivered, the quality product needs to be delivered to the patient in a usable format. That's the most important objective of all of us working in the entire cold chain supply chain. Now, coming to what we do and how did we really improve is, I'm sure we all know that we all understand a label claim for the pharmaceutical products, which typically comes out of the data that is generated from the stability at the manufacturer's end. This tells us about how long the product can be outside of a cold chain, how long it can sustain, what are the risks involved in that. So in the last maybe 5 to 6 years, I have seen that there's a bigger collaboration, greater collaboration that has developed between the manufacturers as well as the the logistics service providers in order to give them the awareness or the understanding of what are the requirements. Like we typically talk to our vendors when I'm trying to get material from my vendor, we also give them the specifications, we get an agreement. Similarly, I've seen a greater collaboration between the manufacturers and the logistics service providers to help them understand, to get an alignment that what are the requirements for the product to be delivered to the patient in a very viable conditions. Maybe I can give you the example a little later. How is it really, really important that we have experienced during this pandemic days? And we all know that we also transport these products, particularly in the Indian generic scenario, generic medicines manufacturing scenario. We are transporting these medicines to the longer distances. And when we are transporting to such a longer distances, again we need to keep in mind the product needs to endure all the climatic conditions it's been really going through. And in the cold chain process or maybe any other logistics process, the product gets handled by various at various stages by multiple people. So in past few years, maybe our gentleman who can speak on the quality from the logistics perspective, he can also help us understand that again a collaboration that really got developed in terms of the quality requirements from the manufacturer and also the logistics service provider. I would say in the past it was not that prevalent though. Now I've seen the logistics service providers like I know I've been working with Agility for a long time. Other service providers they started training their people. They have a kind of a task force of the people handling exclusively the pharmaceutical manufactured products. So that's a very important development that we see. That's a collaboration. So we understand the requirements from each other. And as we also develop the new products and the medicines, we all know that we need to deliver them under the rigid temperature conditions. And in the process, like possibly vaccine would be a best example, though I'm not competent enough to speak on the development activities, but we know how fast the technology was leveraged, and then the packaging solutions were brought out in collaboration between both the manufacturing as well as the packaging solution service providers. That's really, really amazing. And the pharmaceutical products requiring the cold chain are slowly becoming the lifeline. I think possibly we've understood this in the last decade with a very foresight that I think this is going to be a real requirement going forward. And then all the organizations started investing their research and development and then their resources in bringing those right solutions for transporting. Because we've seen a tremendous increase in the cold chain requirements for the pharmaceutical products by, by many patients as well as by from different countries across the globe. And as manufacturers, like you rightly mentioned, in cutting the waste, we certainly have that our endeavor to really help and sustain the environmental aspects of it. So also, we need to comply with the regulations imposed by various regulatory authorities, may it be India or the countries where we are supplying. So typically, like I think you really touched upon that, when we are identifying and selecting certain packaging materials, we look at the weight of the material. So that's important when we are using the air cargoes and so many things. If I can really cut maybe a 1 mm or 2 mm of cardboard, possibly that can give me better advantage in terms of the weight. So these are certain diligent thought process that goes into by our research and development teams and the packaging solution teams. We've done a lot of optimization in terms of our pallet loads with respect to ease of handling. As I mentioned, uh, once it leaves the factory, it's handled by multiple people at multiple points, and so it's important that the way they are handling, of course, today in the internet era, we know we've got so many feedback sessions and then pictures, videos, everything we can online get it how they are handling. The handling becomes very, very important. Also, the material that we are using for palletization of our products, keeping in mind that I'm sure we all understand that changing a primary packaging material for a pharmaceutical industry, when I say primary packaging component, a product, the material that is in touch with the drug product or the formulation, that's not really easy because any change in that will require a lot of regulatory implications and then filing. So whatever we can do in terms of reducing the waste is can be the opportunities or in the secondary or the tertiary packaging materials, may it be weight reduction, may it be using the optimized palletization or the packaging of the product. At the same time, what is more important is monitoring the temperatures throughout the journey of this consignment, entire supply chain process, with the usage of data loggers. I know we are into an era where we are slowly developing, improving on the availability of the data loggers, the the GPRS systems and everything which are inbuilt in the data loggers. That's what has possibly come up in the recent few years. And the data storage and retrieval, again in the current era, availability of the data, analysis, and then taking steps in case any improvement opportunities are needed as becoming a very, very vital process in the chain. And the type of insulations that we have used, we have certainly changed from what we were doing from today what we are currently using. The thickness of the insulation for our products, which will also sustain in the entire journey of the product from factory to the destination. And we know we are all governed by the weights in terms of the regulations made in air cargo or an ocean cargo. The time tested and the temperature controlled devices that we are using to monitor. Now, on the second part, what you said, Mr. Ritu, the challenges and the improvement areas that we were really talking about. I think it's important. Let me give you a very latest example that we have really experienced during the pandemic time. While we are taking the utmost care in the cold chain logistics, we are also seeing temperature excursions. Could we really make it zero with all the what we have done in the recent years gone by? I don't think so. We still see a lot of opportunity in the improvement there because we've seen any excursions in the temperature. Why is it important? This example, let me give you. We have shipped some COVID critical medicines to our customers, and believe me, the patients were really waiting, and the product after reaching the destination partially has to be rejected. This particular medicine, the hospitals were waiting for this medicine to be delivered, and they keep sending us the messages, we've got medicine only to cover for another 4 hours with the patients in the hospital. And we have a consignment that's coming in where the temperature excursion and then partial the data logger on one couple of pallets is showing an excursion, so we could not use them. So these are the areas where we still see improvement. It may not be the cost of the product that we are rejecting, but it is the essential need of that particular hour to survive or save our patients' lives. So that's where we really possibly have to adopt a technology where how can we really zero down these? I mean, that's an opportunity or a challenge I would see. In fact, yesterday I was watching to one of the sessions, and one of the industry experts said that he has actually put a lot of emphasis on training of the police. Possibly the above example that what we have seen, it can also be make our training process even more robust between both manufacturers as well as the logistics service providers. I mean, at the same time, we appreciate all the efforts by the companies involved in bringing out the latest packaging solutions. And in the recent past, we have seen everybody came together, and in no time, I think everybody's objective was to how fast we can really deliver the vaccine to across the globe. That's really wonderful. Kudos to all those who have put their wonderful efforts. Now, we all started leveraging the new software and technologies in increasing the pace at which we really can develop these new solutions. I think that's where we still can have an opportunity to really leverage the new technologies. One example could be, like I was giving, we use a data logger with a GPRS. I may really be able to track my consignment from starting till the destination? Possibly not. So that's where we still have an opportunity to see, because when the temperature excursion happens in the transit, there is an opportunity that we can correct the situation there so that the product is intact and you can still deliver on time to the patients. I think lastly, possibly this is more relevant to our local infrastructure. We have a lot of scope for the infrastructure development on our roads and other handling equipment that we have at the ports. So that's an opportunity. Basically, our experts on the panel can throw some light on what exactly is being done on that. That's all from my side. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I can firstly I thank you that you touched upon a few of the very important aspect in terms of the things which has already been done. But more importantly, you have touched the core of this particular initiative, UBCC, because we have now some work to be done. So that's something I would say that appreciate that you've given us some tasks like, okay, on the temperature side, on the visibility side, on the infrastructure side, so that like we move on to the our efforts to drive this and make the industry more secure in terms of the upgraded infrastructure and successful execution of the pharma shipments. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, coming to the next one, because so you already touched upon the innovation aspect. So we have someone from an innovation packaging company. So let's learn something on the innovation part. We have Mr. Christopher Stodge, Global Head of Sales from Vecutech. So, dear sir, Vecutech is a dynamic high-tech company, and that has been pioneering in the development of innovative solution in the insulation industry. Can you briefly explain what are the steps Vecutech has ensured to make the cold chain packaging more efficient, space-saving, and lastly, the environmental friendly? So over to you, Christopher.
Thank you, Ritu, and thanks for your question. It's great being on today's panel. It's a big pleasure and honor being part of today's UBCC session. And your question is a very crucial and important one in a times where we see increased demand for temperature-controlled logistics globally in different industries, pharma, healthcare, not only for the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, a global challenge we're all jointly working on to overcome and meet the requirements to bring vaccine quick as possible to all patients and corners to the world. Temperature controlled logistics goes beyond. It touches on perishable food business and other verticals. It has different scopes. There is international, intercontinental business. There is intracontinental, more regional business, or even domestic business. And a crucial building block to any temperature controlled logistics and vital for an unbroken temp chain is a temperature controlled packaging solution. And this needs to be adjusted and complying to technical and regulatory requirements to secure the product safety and integrity. And it needs to be cost efficient at the same time. But at some stage, it comes to an end of life. There is a waste that we generate with any packaging solution we put in place. And if we cannot avoid waste, we should at least strive to reduce it to a minimum. So sustainability is at the top of the agenda. It's all about the aspect of green. It's about energy efficiency, and energy efficiency starts with two components looking at our packaging solutions. That is vacuum insulation panels, which is a high class, very thin insulation material. And it's about phase change materials, PCM for short, which is a high performance energy storing element. Combining vacuum insulation panels, VIP for short, and phase change materials, PCM for short, allows to build very compact and space-saving packaging solutions. And either within that very dense packaging, you can achieve a very high performance, so a very high autonomy, a time in which temperature is kept stable within a defined temperature range, or by reducing the amount of phase change materials inside, you may reduce the performance, move more into a medium performance, but have a significant reduction in weight, and therefore leading to reduced transportation space and cost. And if solutions, packaging solutions of the rack which we offer do still give a possibility to be even more efficient for some specific use cases with some of our clients, then we are in a position to customize packaging solutions to have an even better efficiency in regards to the ratio of outer dimensions and inner payload, reducing weight and adjusting to the appropriate performance required. So when it comes, and that is part of your question, to the environmentally friendliness of packaging solutions, there is some very crucial elements to look at, and we can share learnings there, serving the industry for many years with our packaging solutions. In order to be environmentally friendly, you need to look at the reuse of packaging solutions wherever possible. Of course, the reuse of any packaging solution needs a strong reverse logistics. We need to see whether and where that is possible, at which cost, with which efforts. But ideally, packaging solutions would be reused in business models like a rental system. And if not reusable, then we may look at a second life of a packaging solution. And if wasted, ideally, it is to be recycled, the different components inside a pallet size or parcel size shipper. And even more ideally, it's biodegradable. And we are looking into these points very specifically. Our solutions are fully recyclable, and there is to come very shortly biodegradable solutions as well. Running on reusable systems, you need to also be in a position to replace damaged parts of any kind of packaging. And for this, it helps to have a modular setup where single components that may have seen some damage during the course of a global temp chain, and by replacing just single parts, you can save resources and, of course, cost. Very crucial to that is also, in case you reuse, that you have a possibility to re-qualify a packaging solution so that it complies to the initial qualification. We call that day one qualification. We have features in place that help us re-qualify the insulation materials, the vacuum insulation panels in our boxes and containers to provide those shippers to the customers in full performance and highest quality as if it was used in day one. I was speaking about the possibility to recycle materials and to have materials in place that are biodegradable. That surely helps to achieve sustainability. Another initiative we took, and more companies should ideally look at, is to have a CO2 neutral production. That comes with a lot of initiatives like a block type thermal power plant we have at our German manufacturing sites, solar panels charging, helping us to charge our electric driven cars. So it's all about carbon neutrality, and that works, for example, also by supporting and growing near shore sourcing. There always needs to be a backup, so we're sourcing globally, but near shore sourcing has helped us to be CO2 neutral since 2020. So we're looking at the second year this year to be neutral from a carbon footprint perspective. Looking at the products, every product we can indicate very clearly and share with anyone who is interested, our partners from freight forwarding and airline business, as well as the farmer shipper and other shipper companies. We can share the footprint over a full life cycle for any of our packaging solutions, single-use and multi-use options, and you will see the footprint, carbon footprint for both manufacturing and wasting of a product, but also during the time of use over months, years, whatever the packaging solution is. So in the end, energy efficiency and environmentally friendliness is also achieved by a very good volume and weight efficiency, increasing and maximizing the payload or fill rate in a packaging solutions. Having the kind of packaging in place based on VIP and PCM helps to also avoid temperature controlled vehicles on the way to the airport or from the airport, covering a door-to-door service that can be then done without any TCV, so saving on diesel and the need to have very specific equipment in place. And finally, environmentally friendliness is driving us when we have developed solutions and put in place, and also using it heavily for COVID-19 vaccine distribution, having dry ice free solutions for temperatures not only at -20 degrees, but far below to -50 degrees and lower, being dry ice free during transportation and also during the preconditioning process of our vacuum insulation panels. So to end my elaboration on your question, Ritu, in order to secure product and secure product integrity, we need to look at an unbroken temp chain. This is a joint effort, a collaboration of many along global temp chains, but packaging is playing a crucial role there, and a packaging solution should ideally be safe, cost efficient, and green, so sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher, for an elaborative insight on the kind of the packaging which you and the innovation and the environmental friendly aspects which you are taking care while producing these packages. As we have now moved on to the next level of our discussion, like we have included the go green and the environmental friendly thing. So we will definitely would like to have more insight from you so that like we can plug in from each of the stakeholder together and can assess basically that the how much of the energy or the carbon footprint basically that one shipment actually generates. So thank you for that. My next question is to Mr. Ravi Kumar Tumalapalli, Head of Logistics, Asia Pacific, Japan and China. Dear Sir, heading logistics for Asia Pacific, Japan and China in Teva Pharmaceuticals, which is a mixed regulated and semi-regulated market. What are the different logistics requirements in such a diversified market? Can you share some best practices which are implemented in your organization, which has resulted in minimizing the product damage due to change in the cold chain packaging? Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Ritu, once again for conducting this wonderful conference. Yes, of course, this is a little different from what we had in the past because we used to have physical meetings and then now we meet everyone online. So, but in the last one and a half year, I think we've all got used to this new normal, and it doesn't feel anything new now. Okay, great. I think with regard to your question, probably I will have to generalize a little bit, Rituparna, because the kind of requirements what we have on cold
So
chain
your voice is
packaging.
not clear, sir.
Let me try. Is it better now?
Yeah, I can hear it like it's audible to me.
Yeah, let me try without the
Yeah, it's better. This is better.
headphone. Is it better now?
Yeah, this is better. Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to little generalize your question rather than only putting on to the APAC markets or the regulated markets, but probably we need to look at solutions, what is fit for use. Because when we are talking about pharmaceutical products, not all pharmaceutical products require active solutions. Not all products need passive solutions. So basically, we need to look at what is needed for the product to be safe. I think that is very important. And some of the characteristics which we need to keep in mind is what is the total transit time from end to end, warehouse to warehouse, door to door, and what are the kind of transit points we have. Whether if we don't get an direct airline or a direct shipping line, then probably we might have to transit in between. And how much is the dwell time of the product in the transit airport? Whether do we have cool dolly facilities there, whether we have enough cold storage facilities in that transit point. These are all the points which we need to keep in mind when we are looking at or evaluating what kind of packaging solution is optimal. And even if we have all the facilities available, there is one thing which we can't really avoid is a little bit of exposure on the tarmac while loading or unloading the product. So basically, all these things we try to incorporate and capture while we do the lane risk assessments for a particular lane before even we ship the product. So I'm not very sure how many organizations in India do the lane risk assessments, but we as an organization, we strongly believe in having lane risk assessments on each and every lane we operate, uh, both whether it is 15 to 25 or 2 to 8 products for every lane globally. We do that, and only after that we execute any new product or any new shipment on that particular lane. So that is one point what I strongly believe in. And second thing what we are looking at is basically from a sustainability point of view, we have been reading in from the school times that there are three mantras which we remember, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Probably this is one thing, we need to still go back to basics and still remember and see whether we can reduce use of packaging material, reuse packaging material, or the packaging material what we have used, can we recycle it. So when we identify our packaging requirements or identify our transportation requirements based on these basic principles, I think there are solutions which are inbuilt into it. For a simple example, as I said, from an sustainability point of view, probably active containers probably might be the first thing which comes to my mind, is basically because we don't waste any packaging material in that. But the fallback on that is basically the active containers are very expensive. So from those checks and balances which we need to look at, 15 to 25 degrees products in most of the cases don't need any active containers. Particularly, even if you look at the longest transit time from Europe into Australia or New Zealand, but still we can still go with passive packaging. So those are the criteria which I feel personally need to be cognizant of when we are taking decisions. And uh, one more thing what we need to look at is within the passive packaging also. I think Christopher already mentioned that how do we see sustainability in passive packaging, degradable materials, recyclable materials. How do we use that in our regular course of life? uh, these are very important nowadays. And specifically if you ask me, this is not my company's opinion, but as an individual, as a professional, I would say that there are a lot of solutions which are available on the table now, which we should consider and give them an opportunity, even if there are smaller players in the market. But we need to really look at the credibility of how do we recycle, how do we reuse this packaging material in order to reduce the overall cost of logistics transportation, and as well as looking at sustainability of the environment. So I think these are some of my opinions. And one more point which you talked about is how do we ensure that the safety of the product is not compromised while we are choosing, or while we are transporting the shipments in this cold chain packaging. It is very difficult because once it is out of your warehouse, then basically it is out of your sight. So we used to have data loggers in the packaging at the end, and at the destination when you take out the data loggers and then download the data, you find some excursions, and doing a post-mortem exercise and collecting the data is a very long drawn process. It takes at least a month's time, if not more, for getting on all the information from all the stakeholders. And every time you ask some information from the stakeholder, whether it is the airport or the transporter, anywhere in the chain, first of all, people will take a back seat and then say that why are you asking this information? Is there any claim which is going to come? So that fear on the mind, people are not transparent enough to share the data. So we have moved on to real-time data loggers, uh, wherein the information comes at any point of time when you need it. It is available online, and wherever you have any kind of deviation or excursion taking place, then all the stakeholders in the chain, the shipper, the receiver, the service provider, everyone gets the alerts on their emails, on their mobile phones, as and when the deviation is occurring, or just before the deviation is occurring, so that everyone gets alerted, and then they can take their precautionary measures. They can alert the airport authority, they can alert the airlines to take suitable actions to avoid a major deviation happening. So I think this is one very good initiative, which even if you spend a couple of dollars on it, but I feel it is helping us a lot in terms of securing our product. So I definitely recommend that, if not today, but sooner or later, the whole industry will go towards this solution of having real-time tracking. I should have answered all your questions. If there is
Yeah,
anything which I'm not clear of, very happy to answer that.
I think so. You covered it very nicely, very precisely. You touched upon all the important aspect, which is very much important for the supply chain and especially for the cold chain part. And this is the later part of your response, like where you have touched upon the transparency of the data, the integration part. That is something which is yes, the industry is learning, yet learning. But yes, in the days to come, that is going to actually provide a better visibility and a much smarter way of working for the supply chain. Thank you for your insights, sir. So
Pleasure.
coming to our the next expert insights from Mr. Henry Mears, Global Director for Cold Chain Consultant. Dear sir, as a cold chain consultant, you've been extensively involved in all the aspect of cold chain and temperature sensitive supply chain. Can you share your experience on the modularity part of the cold chain packaging system, and how can it benefit on the cost efficiency, and why is it important? Over to you, Henry.
Thank you. Yes, look, I suppose we're lucky we get to see everything that's happening within the supply chain. I'd just like to perhaps go back a little bit before we move on to the answers to your question. If you look at a fast-moving supply chain, it's relatively easy to move products through a fast-moving supply chain. However, when you add temperature and maintaining temperature into that supply chain, you add about 20 to 25 additional variables. And of course, you know, that's what complicates and makes the cold chain far more complex. Just touching on and following on from some of the previous speakers, to perhaps answer the big question, there is technologies available and the opportunity to have almost zero temperature excursions already exists. Those innovations by the companies, the temperature monitoring, the ability to move product through the supply chain with minimal or virtually zero excursions already exists. So I think technology-wise, I don't believe there's any problem out there that can't be solved today. The challenge is with most companies, the cost. And, you know, I hear it, I've been hearing at these conferences for the last 20 years that I've been speaking at, cost-effective cold chain solutions. I like to turn that around and say effective cold chain solutions, because if they don't actually work or they don't maintain your product, it hasn't been very cost effective, and you've basically contributed to the environmental footprint. I guess what most companies are looking for at the moment is, you know, what we call the silver bullet. They're looking for a simple solution, one size fits all. Now, you know, the purpose of this conference is about sustainability, reusability, and reducing the carbon or the global footprint. There's not one solution that can be used through your entire supply chain to achieve that. Unfortunately, I wish there was, but there needs to be multiple solutions, and each solution should be selected based on the part of the supply chain where it's to be used, because the last mile solution is a different solution to the Vacutech solution. I'm not saying they don't have a last mile solution, but the use of the solution is different for the last mile compared to your intercontinental type solutions. So, when people ask me, about the sustainability and about the challenges, I'm very open, and as I've just repeated to you, those solutions already exist. You can monitor your entire supply chain from end to end. Those solutions exist. Certainly, I'm a big fan of VIP. I'm a big fan of vacuum panels, PCMs, and also in-transit monitoring. So I suppose when you actually look at the entire supply chain, I think there was a point raised earlier about excursions. Now, with the technologies that exist, there is no reason to have excursions in your supply chain. And at the same time, it's very possible to reduce your carbon and environmental footprint. And I'll just give you one example where I see waste. I mean, we're lucky we get to follow the supply chain from the raw materials entering into the factories right through to patients. So we see the entire supply chain. I think one of the easiest places to reduce your environmental footprint or reduce your carbon impact is the last mile solutions. And I would suggest in more than 50% of the cases that we're asked to look into this part of the supply chain, the biggest waste we see is in the last mile. And this week, I think I've had 2 conversations with companies where they have chosen a single packaging solution for their entire last mile. Now, I think on one of these calls I was on earlier this week, that packaging was validated for 72 hours. And yet when we look into the supply chain, most of the deliveries, and it's generally upwards of 80% of the last mile, is in the major capital cities. Usually a much smaller percentage is delivered to the country areas. So it doesn't take 72 hours to deliver a solution in a capital city. If we look at even the most extensive supply chains, a long day would be 16 hours. So just by selecting and validating packaging which meets the requirements of the supply chain, you can easily reduce your carbon footprint, your sustainability. So if we just take this 72-hour packaging example for a reduction in the carbon footprint, the size of the packaging is going to be much larger. The weight of the packaging is going to be much larger. So therefore, we've already contributed to the energy to produce the packaging, the energy to deliver the shipment. And of course, you need much more energy. And if you're using a PCM or an ice pack, you're requiring far more energy to deliver or to pack a 72-hour packing. So that is one of the easiest places the entire industry can look at reducing its carbon footprint and sustainability. Certainly, I'm a big fan of reuse, reusability, reverse logistics. And where possible, when we're designing supply chain, we look at those options. It saves the client money. It certainly makes effective use of the assets of the company. So, that's 2 very, very simple solutions that I would propose that the industry should look at. Now, as I was saying before, there's up to 25, variables in a cold chain. But if we take a step back and take the last mile solution and look at that same dynamic in the intercontinental shipments. And I'll be a little bit guarded with this statement, because before the pandemic, it was very easy to deliver anything in the world within less than 48 hours. And, you know, companies like Agility are excellent, you know, logistics providers. And when I talk with these logistics providers, most of the time they can deliver their product, deliver the goods with 99% on-time deliveries. So again, if you look at, you know, quite often we get asked for packaging solutions that will maintain temperature for 164 hours. I agree that the pandemic has created some challenges in that area, but certainly more transport is coming online now. So we should be able to return in the near future to be able to deliver anything anywhere in the world within 72 hours. And of course, that reduces your footprint dramatically. So I think, you know, there are some very simple solutions available. The technologies do exist. When we sort of look at the packaging side of the business, there is a lot of wasted efficiencies, and certainly where the wastage comes from is the companies to some degree are being lazy in terms of they're just wanting one size to fit all. So they're saying, well, we just want one size because it's easy to handle. Well, if you're serious about, you know, reducing environmental footprint and, you know, reducing the carbon impact, and we all need to put some effort, then one size doesn't fit all. You need some multiple sizes, and that will reduce your carbon footprint, you know, very quickly. So the other way, if you have, and many companies have what I call a standard product carton, or sometimes they have 2 or 3 product cartons. But the principles don't change. We've just finished a project with a large global company based out of India, where we were able to improve the packaging efficiencies by 25 to 30%. Now, if you are moving, you know, by redesigning the packaging and developing packaging which is more suitable for the purpose, you can gain up to 25%, 30% efficiencies out of your packaging. You know, moving air or spare space in cold chain packaging is not efficient, and it's very costly. So if you're talking about cost-effective solutions, next time you're walking through the warehouse, just have a look in your packaging. See how much air you are shipping around the world or across the country. That's the first place you can improve your cost, and 2, your environmental impact. So there's many opportunities out there. It's really a case of applying those simple principles, and the desire to change. I suppose the desire to change and make a difference is really all the industry needs to focus on, because the solutions are definitely there. So I think, you know, hopefully that answers your question for you. But look, whenever I've looked into the logistics supply chain, 99% of the waste is over-engineered packaging or over-specified packaging for the purpose. You know, people take this safety margin, they don't trust the logistics suppliers. And, you know, I've done the exercise multiple times. Look, at least once a month, we're sitting with a client from their logistics suppliers, and I can assure you it's always up around the 99% of deliveries are on time. But they all want to talk about the one shipment that they maybe lost 15 years ago, where it got stuck in the supply chain for 12 days. They don't focus on what they get right. They focus on what they get, you know, that one-off exception. Well, that's where the money is going. That's where the carbon is going into those. The exceptions have basically become the rule, and that's very inefficient. So, from our experience, we do this every day of the week. We see great opportunity to change.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew.
A pleasure.
I think very, very detailed insight. You touch base very important aspect of the weight volume efficiency, because that is something which the need of the hour, because there you have the more you can bring the cost efficiencies in the freight, in the packaging, and you only pay for what you send, not for the air which is being transferred.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll just add one more point that's, I think, a very valuable lesson for anybody, wanting to improve with this. You cannot take an isolated look at any of your supply chain. You must take a helicopter view of your entire supply chain, because there is small efficiencies and gains to be gained along the entire supply chain, from your packaging to your transport, and all of those small changes can add up to an overall, in some cases, we find an overall efficiency gain of over 10%. Now, if you take those efficiency gains of 10% in your supply chain, it essentially, there's obviously a bit of loss in there, but essentially it translates into a 10% more efficient supply chain, or a cost reduction of a similar percentage. So please take a step back and look at the entire supply chain.
Sure, Andrew. So looking into the sense of time, we'll quickly move on a little faster. The next question is to Mr. Pranav Malik, Head Export Import Operations, Field Fresh. Yes, sir, you have vast experience in handling the various perishable products. Can you please explain the difference in the cold chain requirement for food, and we compare it with the pharma industry, considering the temperature range and the other requirements like ventilation and all? Over to you, Pranav.
Thanks, Ritu. Well, my friend Ravi has touched upon on all the major aspects and beautifully projected by him. So the concerns remain the same both for the pharma as well as the perishable, which is fruits and vegetables. To be honest, looking at wherever I have interacted, a perishable has been a very broader category and very freely used for pharma, meat, fruits and vegetables. However, looking at the basic nature of the product, I said for me, fruits and vegetable qualifies best due to the lowest shelf life among all the three. Well, this raises the questions on a specific need or a treatment a perishable produced like food requires. Generally, fruit and vegetables cargo during its journey from the farm to fork, or rather we call it from the pack house till the end consumers, it will yield good result if consistent cold chain less than 10 degree is maintained. It's an ask. It's an ask of the industry. But the major point that has to be taken care is that there shouldn't be any incidents of thermal shock during at any of the handling points, because by the basic nature of the product, it's actually perishable. So to add on to that, fruits and vegetables have an acceptable shelf life of 10 to 14 days, primarily because they are being the plant origin. So they need a proper ventilation to breathe. But when we say breathe, it need to be a controlled breathing. Hence, packaging and storage need to be planned in a manner that product survives good, it looks fresh, and retain its nutritional value till the customer. So my entire discussion or my entire submission is all around the perishable nature of the fruits and vegetable as a category. In India, primarily, we have seen that from the time it's being harvested, it reaches the pack house, 30% of the produce is gone. There is a cold chain gap. It's required. Yes, we all know, but how many can afford it? It's still a question. From the logistics handling perspective, looking at the air freight model or the air export model, the receiving docks across all the perishable centers at all the major airports, they're all common. So when a truck reaches there, it's docking at a perishable center or a perishable dock, but it's generalized. It's generally is having a temperature of 50 degree. But is this right for a perishable produce like fruits and vegetable? My answer would be no. Every product has their own specific requirement. I would strongly recommend, I would strongly suggest that a dedicated loading, unloading, and a pass through for a perishable produce need to be maintained less than 10 degree. 2 to 8 is a wish list, but even we are able to maintain a temperature of 10 degree and a less, I think we have won half a battle. Ravi also pointed out at the usage of the data logger. Yes, data logger are now currently being used, but exactly they are more of a post-mortem. The damage is done. You can only sit and crib that the product is gone. Looking at the product like perishable fruits and vegetables, it's more of a commodity. Data logger in the current scenario, which is being primarily being used by all the I would say the prime exporters, is just helping them to do a course correction after a couple of weeks once you get that feedback from the quality team of the end customers. Having said that, I would also like to touch upon that why there is a need to have a separate movement and a storage at all transshipment points for a perishable produce like fruits and vegetable, because not only they are temperature sensitive, they are fragile and they are very order sensitive also. Being kept at any strong order product like a meat or any essence is going to impact the produce which is being getting exported, and it become all the more challenge when you are shipping out your product to the EU market. The DEFRAs and the authorities over there, they are becoming too stringent post Brexit. My another request or a recommendation primarily would be that Ritu, I am just taking care of the timer that you have given to me. So I would be going precisely with that. So my recommendation would be that cool dollies which are available at some of the airports are not doing justice because the availability and the storage they have are limited. Perishable fruits and vegetables, primarily when they move into a lots of 3 to 4 ULDs or a couple of pallets. But are those cool dollies equipped? Again, it's a question. My other ask would be that the perishable as a trade is willing to accept any solution, active or passive. I leave it to the experts to decide. But keeping in mind that the ventilation is required, product is a price sensitive commodity, is a small option of reducing the handover time from the terminal to the aircraft can be done. Current COVID times, the cargo lay at the tarmac more than 10 hours. It's almost a 10 hours from the departure. As a perishable trade, we would always love to have a D-3 or D-4 departure. But these are the solutions, these are the options which are available, where the expert like all the passive technology suppliers, big or small, they need to come, and perishable as a trade is willing to adapt, but it has to be cost effective. That would be my submission. Thanks, Ritu.
Thank you, Pranav, and thank you especially for keeping the sense of time. Appreciate that. My next question is to Dominic Mayer, Senior Director, Global Quality Logistics for Agility Logistics. Dear sir, you've been thoroughly involved in the global implementation of various quality aspects within the freight forwarding organization. Generally, people link quality with cost. What are your thoughts on how the industry can achieve cost efficiency by implementing quality in all aspects of logistics activities? Over to you, Dominic.
Thank you, Ritu, and good afternoon, everybody. I would like to take up the discussion based on yesterday's calls as well and today's calls. In yesterday's first discussion, there was mentioned from the Indian airport companies that COVID did lead to that they had to rethink their processes. They had to deal with authorities and think about, hey, staff availability, how we plan our resource, how we get the freight faster out of the airport, all these challenges they faced due to the COVID situation. And we as a freight forwarder faced actually the same issues, just a little bit in other areas. So from one day to the other, we were faced with that we didn't have capacity anymore on the market, especially in the airline industry. So they took out the capacities because lockdowns happened everywhere in the world. And our operations teams had to find solutions to move the pharma freight further to the final destination as per expected delivery times from our customer. And this did cause some additional complexities on our end, especially when we talk about passive solution, active solution, and the time duration such a solution performs. So we were pushed to go into lane mappings, think about how we can implement the best supply chain solution by considering the same packaging currently, but considering as well on top of that maybe a lane, as it was mentioned by Andrew before, where we could serve within 48 hours before from door to door transit time, we ended up at 180 hours. And this did push us to work together with our customers, actually, talk with the customer. We did even change supply chains in that regard, that we picked up the goods loose and did stuff the containers or add the packaging solution shortly before we handed it over to the airline, just to increase the performance of the packaging and not to impact the product integrity negatively. Based on all this exercise, I figured personally out that, as Andrew mentioned as well, one size fits all is quite a practice currently in the industry, that the thinking of one size fits all should go away. So based on our lane mappings we did, lane risk assessments we did during the COVID, we figured out it might be that for a longer lane to Australia, which was mentioned by Ravi as well, we can downgrade from an envirotainer to a passive solution even, but we might have to use a little bit the more reliable solution for such a lane. But for shorter lanes, below maybe 60 hours, we can easily take a passive solution. And this did help as well to manage the cost efficiently as well for our customer, actually. In addition to that, it's as well supply chain optimization goes along, pre-clearance optimization, that we ship the freight when we have the green light from the destination office. We use pre-clearance possibilities, avoid Friday weekend and national holiday arrivals. And even we went as far that we did pick up the freight early in the morning. Our customer did even open the warehouse a little bit earlier, that allowing us then to do a same day handover to the airline to keep the transit times on a lower level. And if you consider all these activities, you will automatically end up in a CO2 reduction because you shorten down the CO2. Due shorter transit times, actually. On top of that, the real-time temperature data logger, which are more and more used by a lot of our customers, did help as well to avoid temperature excursions up front. So we receive an email from the logger, we can act, we can deal with the airline, with the trucking companies, and we had a lot of cases where we could avoid a temperature excursion. From a quality point of view, to go into an investigation in a COPPA, providing an investigation report, as it was mentioned as well by Ravi before, this takes time. A lot of people are involved, and these are somehow the hidden quality costs. And as more COPPAs we can avoid, as less the quality costs are in the back. In addition to that, I would like to share a best practice with you, which I got aware about actually last year. I had an interesting conversation with a company, a wholesaler, pharma wholesaler, having multiple warehouses in the whole Europe. And they went into the scenario that they did rethink about 15 to 25 storage products. They did they did raise the question, is it really required that we store a product between 15 and 25 by considering what is written on the packaging of the product? And they figured out that, especially now in this example for Europe, if you take the same product in different country, in one country it's written keep between 15 and 25, do not store above 30 degrees, store in original packaging and protect from light, below 25. So they figured out they have various different temperature requirements for the same product, which did lead then for them to the question, can we not store our products between 9 to 25 degrees Celsius in our warehouse? They did an analysis of the full product portfolio they have, and 80% of the products in the 15 to 25 range, they did change to 9 to 25. But they did deal as well with authorities and get approval from the authorities that this is allowed. With that initiative, they could save 70% of the energy costs, which does as well then reduce the CO2 emission. And I just did want to share this example with you, just to rethink as well the different temperature range, because as per GDP guideline, it's not written that you have to store the goods between 15 to 25 during the transportation or in warehouse. It's mostly defined, take the stability data, do a risk assessment, and find the appropriate temperature range. And finally, we as a freight forwarding industry, we need some global standardization in temperature ranges, 15, 25, 2 to 8. But if you could rethink, or let's say take this example as well, to rethink maybe your temperature strategy from a product perspective for 15 and 25 products, this would as well allow us to go into much less deviation investigations, providing you COPPAs. If you would start rethinking about, can my product as well be transported in a range of 9 to 25? And that's it in the consent of timer too. So I did shorten down everything a bit.
I appreciate that part. Actually, the discussion, I can understand that it can go for hours and hours, because it's quite vast and it's very, very informative. So thanks for your support and the good insight which you provided. Last, I will request Mr. Samit Jain to present an overview on basically because Advance has been continuously researching, investing into specialty polymers, phase change material for the application of thermal energy storage. What are your various processes organization has implemented to build the environmental friendly cold chain packaging? So you can, over to you, Samit, if you can summarize that.
Thank you, Ritu, and it's a pleasure to be on the panel once again. And I think everyone at Agility has really put in a lot of effort to work through this and bring it to, I think it's third year right now.
Yeah, this is the fourth edition.
Fourth year.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So coming to your question on what can be done or what have we done, looking at the environment in mind. So when we've heard everyone talk about, two temperatures, 2 to 8 degrees and 15 to 25, which is the control room temperature, so to say. Now, in both these cases, most people today are still using either water or paraffin-based phase change materials. And our effort has been to move away from paraffin. Paraffin is an oil source, petroleum source, and is definitely not considered as environment friendly. So when you look at the 15 to 25 or the controlled room temperature, we are trying to push people to move to what we have as an inorganic material, which is a mixture of water and some salts. So these are definitely cheaper, more economical, as well as they can be disposed of without any harm to the environment. So that's one effort that we are trying to do. There are a few packaging companies and pharma companies which have begun to adopt it, and we are selling some of these materials. But there is a general, people are not easily moving towards this change because it needs a lot of validation at their end. But that effort really needs to go in to make a move from paraffin. And those who have been using, let's say, warm or cold water to maintain this 15 to 25, even for them, the amount of cold water that you would need or chilled water that you would need at 15 degrees or 18 degrees Celsius to maintain it is way more than what a phase change material which can change phase at 20 degree would require. And that would reduce the size of your packaging also, thereby you need less packing material, less chemicals to move your shipment. The same thing at the 2 to 8 degree range. Again, people use a 5-degree paraffin material. We are trying to propagate a plant-based fatty acid, which is at 3 degrees Celsius and could work as well. So the movement from a paraffin-based material to inorganic or plant-based materials is one effort that we are trying to do. And we have already seen a lot of organizations, a lot of packaging companies, as well as pharma companies, willing to take this up. The other thing which is not yet been done, but we are trying to do in our packaging is, can we have a single type of plastic? For example, everyone is using a polythene or a HDP bottle to package the phase change material, and the foam could probably be let's say, a expanded polypropylene or extruded polypropylene. Can both the materials be polypropylene? Can your outer cover, which is, let's say, everyone looks at paper or cardboard, because they think paper is very environment friendly, which unfortunately is not, because the amount of water that goes into, growing trees and then making paper is immense. So if that can also move to a, let's say, a polypropylene corrugation, so everything becomes polypropylene, and therefore the entire package is easier to recycle for a recycler. The biggest problem with recycling today is that you have so many varied materials. To try and make things attractive, we put a aluminium layer on top, which may not be serving any purpose, on a pouch. So can that be removed? So there needs to be a shift in the way we look at packaging. Can it be, we have to look at it not from necessarily the ease of the consumer, but the impact on the environment. So there needs to be a shift in that thinking process that needs to come in, and we are trying to move towards this. In India, for example, we have what we call the EPR laws, which have come in, extended producer responsibility. So I think this needs to be adopted in spirit by a lot of the packaging companies and a lot of the pharma companies, that can I have all my packaging collected? Can I tie up with a EPR service provider and see what can be done? So these are the kind of initiatives that I think we need to do to make the packaging sustainable in the true sense of the word. I won't take much more time, I think, because we're already running short, but I'll be open to any questions.
So thank you firstly, and appreciate considering respecting the time. I think ending the session with your views actually gives and provides the confidence that the system, like there's a already an initiative which has been started to reduce this, and it comes with the heart, with the seriousness. So, and we know that there's no system approach which is enough to design, develop the system environmental friendly packaging solution. Is not necessary to have the in-depth insight into different concept, tools, packaging innovation, guiding principles to reduce each of these three environmental impacts areas. It is also necessary to be able to make informed trade-offs between these areas, between various packaging features, and between the economic and the environmental impacts of the packaging. So as an initiative, as a next initiative, like we will try to plug all the thoughts and the different ideas from all the stakeholders, because it's not only the packaging part, like how much of the energy is utilized to manufacture the product. So it starts from the manufacturing to the basically the packaging which is used, then it comes to the actually the fuel which is consumed as a transport, and then we see that basically with analytics that which type of product actually how much of the energy is basically required, and what type of the carbon footprint that actually produces, and then we can have a better, say, an idea on what type of the solutions would be the right fit for which type of the products. So I think with this we can summarize this. I think this is a part one session, so we will have something as a part two in the maybe in the next panel next year. Yeah. Thank you every panel member for your efforts, for your contribution, for your insights to the entire audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ritu.
Thank you,
Pleasure
sir.
attending this.
Thanks, Rituparna.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Ritu.
Thank you very much, Ritu.
Thank you. Yeah. So from here, I think Karvi can take it over because our next panel members are already waiting.
Yeah, thank you, Ritu sir. So as we conclude our first session for today, I would like to extend my gratitude to all the panelists who have joined us and enlightened us on the importance of the right packaging in transportation of vaccine. And of course, has also highlighted how right packaging can help us give back to the environment. Also, a very special thanks to Mr. Ritu, who has done a spectacular job in moderating this session. So thank you. Now, without wasting any much of time, let's keep the brainstorming going and jump on to the second panel discussion for today. As the supply chain faces the heat of the COVID pandemic, the existing gaps and inefficiencies in a supply chain were brought into sharper focus and were magnified. Businesses were compelled to onboard new suppliers and at the same time manage tight collaboration and communication with their existing suppliers. It would not be wrong to say that apart from being a boon to the cold chain industry, another silver lining of the COVID pandemic was that of highlighting the importance and power of collaboration. On this very note, we will commence the next panel discussion for UBCC 2021 on the theme, Power of Collaboration, all logistics stakeholders committed for one goal. This session will be moderated by Mr. Eric Tenkate, Vice President, Global Life Sciences, Agility. Can we please have Mr. Eric on the screen?
Good afternoon, good
afternoon.
Morning.
So Mr. Eric, in his present role, is developing and growing Agility's life science vertical globally. He has a broad international supply chain experience acquired across various sectors, of which the last 10 years is in life science in a mix of senior operational and commercial management roles. He has developed his expertise in redesigning the end-to-end supply chain operating models with a keen understanding of issues and needs in the life science arena. A strategic leader with a high can-do attitude, passionate about people, developing teams, building partnerships, Willist always looking for a win-win solution. Welcome to the show, Mr. Eric. Now, without wasting any much of time, I would like you to please take the charge and commence with the much-awaited second panel for today. Over to you, Mr. Eric.
Okay, thank you, Kavi. Very much appreciated. Yeah, so last stream for the Unbroken Cold Chain. Unfortunately, not face to face, but I think that's enough has been said about that. I think we have a great panel today, which I would like to go around the table and have them introduce themselves. Following which, I would like to give a brief of background and then create a platform in which we can start discussing or answering certain questions which we have prepared for this panel. So without further ado, and I go from left to right, and that's in any random order, but this is how it shows on my screen. Could I maybe ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and starting with Mr. Thomas Sorensen.
Yes, hello. So my name is Thomas Sorensen. I work with UNICEF Supply Division in Copenhagen. I've been with UNICEF for almost 20 years, the last 14 years at senior management level, and has been operating and focusing primarily on vaccines, both in terms of vaccine procurement, but also being in the fields, helping, supporting programs in distribution of these important assets for the public health systems. So let me also, in the interest of time, just stop there on the introduction part.
Thank you, Thomas. And going to Mr. KK.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning for some of you who have logged in from various places in the world. My name is Krishna Kumar. You can call me KK, and you can actually. I actually am responsible for managing Agility's business in India. I'm the managing director for Agility India. I've been in the company for the last 16 years, and since this is the 4th edition of UBCC, we've also been fortunate to meet some of you in person during the last 3 editions. Unfortunately, because of the situation that we are in, we are forced to do this live, but very happy to be here, share some thoughts with you. I hope in the future that we will again be able to do this face-to-face in one of the locations that we usually do this in India. Thank you and welcome to the discussion.
Thank you, KK. Really look forward to doing that as well. I mean, you've been hosting it from the beginning, and it's become a very big event. Going to the next panelist, Mr. Murray.
Hello, Eric. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Murray Groeneveld. Working from home, I think as most of you have done for the last year and a half. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for SkyCell, officially based in Zurich. I'm leading the commercial team around the globe. SkyCell, I've been in business for almost 7 years now, providing hybrid pharma containers. Personally, myself, I've been in contract logistics in general, and pharma logistics for almost 35 years. And I've worked for a number of multinational companies where I've had a number of senior executive roles. So for the sake of time, Eric, we get back to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, and then the next one, Mr. Robert, thank you very much. I know it's weekend in Abu Dhabi, so very much appreciated of you joining, and sorry to keep you waiting.
Not a problem. Thank you, Eric, and good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Robert Sutton. I have 2 roles here. One is the head of logistics for Abu Dhabi Ports, based out of Abu Dhabi. And the other one is the lead on the Hub Consortium, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. Prior to that, I was with DHL Supply Chain and Global Forwarding for close to 30 years in different parts of the world. And I'm very much looking forward to both the panel and the interesting questions, which I hope we get. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Can I ask Mr. Sanjeev?
Thank you, Eric, and good afternoon, everyone, and my best greetings from Nairobi. Very cold afternoon in Kenya. I am the founder and CEO of Astral Aviation Limited, which is a all-cargo airline based out of Kenya. We operate a fleet of 14 cargo aircrafts, and we fly a lot of cold chain items, including vaccines, to and within Africa, especially to the hotspots. I'm truly grateful to Agility for hosting this event and for inviting me to be a panelist. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Happy to have you on board as well. Then going back to Europe, Mr. Santosh.
Hi, Eric. I'll follow my fellow panelists, but keeping it very short. So Santosh Thakur, I look after sales and marketing for Rombi. Rombi is a startup, cutting-edge Silicon Valley company. We bring real-time visibility to the market. My role here is to bring the solution to market, to show how we can bring efficiencies, agility, collaboration to the market. Prior to that, I was with other ERP companies, Salesforce, SAP, and the like, working there to bring solution to market, to really transform business for the better. That's it.
Thank you, Santosh. And then going back to India, Mr. Rahul, last but certainly not least.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Agility, for having all of us here for this discussion. I'm Rahul Bansil. I lead corporate partnerships for UNICEF in India, joined UNICEF last year, and only recently moved to India from London. My role is to bring the private sector, especially corporates, and leverage their kind of experience, expertise, and resources so UNICEF can be more effective in the work we do for children. And UNICEF in India has worked with the government and the wider stakeholders to respond to the COVID pandemic, and we just are coming out of the second wave where things got really complex and challenging. So a lot of different corporates came forward to support our work, and we're very grateful for that. and we were able to respond through these partnerships much more effectively. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for joining. I'm very pleased to have two panelists from the UNICEF team available here, because I think that totally links to to today's theme on the power of collaboration. And I think what's pretty fair to state that everybody in the panel, but also probably who's viewing, has had challenges for the last year. I mean, when I look from a life science perspective, within the 3PL, we've been extremely busy. The moment that COVID broke out, the first moment, no more travel, PPE came up, entrepreneurial thinking started to pop up, and then ultimately the vaccines being developed and finding ways to deliver that. And pretty soon it became clear that this is something that's not going to go away. And what you saw and that's what I saw from our perspective, you saw that there is a need for collaboration within the business itself. Being part of the World Economic Forum, you start to engage with the likes of with shipping lines, with other LSPs in their World Trade Organizations to see how and in which way we can move the vaccines across the globe in the best possible way. So that's where the power or the collaboration initially started. And once that mindset came across in the industry, I've seen people opening up. And I'm not only talking about logistics service providers, I'm talking about more the whole end-to-end supply chain all of a sudden became very, very broad, where people needed to work together. I mean, we're fortunate enough, or I'm fortunate enough that I work for Agility, and they have a strong footprint in the Middle East and Africa, which we can leverage. There are other providers that have planes, automobiles, planes, trains, automobiles, as you normally see in the movie, that we could leverage the combination of that. So that's that collaboration you started to see. Talking a bit about the background or the entrepreneurial thinking within Agility, we also now, through a joint venture, have started to produce pills for COVID, something completely out of scope from a normal 3PL, but that also underlines the different stages that we've gone through, I think, the last year. And as we were discussing this panel discussion with the panelists, we came more or less to go to the conclusion that, yes, somehow the industry have moved forward, and it will never be the same anymore. With the likes of Romby, with the likes of SkyCell, with the consortium thought of hope, and that in combination with the airlines that supporting that, 3PLs, and the NGOs that play a role there. So with that, as an introduction, we're trying to answer a couple of questions throughout this panel discussion, and I have to apologize because I need to jump off at 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock my time, simply because I need to jump on a plane, and then Mr. Satish or Ritupana will take over. Everything has been rehearsed, so all the content, everything will be shared. So let me first address the question, and I would like to start with you, Robert. Can the logistics industry collaborate and leverage each other's strengths to develop and to deliver the right solution?
Thanks, Eric. Good question. So let's think about collaboration, but let's understand why we don't collaborate first of all. So historically, we don't collaborate because we compete, and competition is good because it drives standards, it drives innovation, it drives all of the optimization of the supply chain, which we all benefit from. So that's one of the main barriers towards collaboration. So what's changed? Well, what's changed is that we have a common goal, and we have a common responsibility. So we have to put aside for a moment our brands, in some cases our egos, and we have to understand that there's a new set of behaviors which are more appropriate in order to come through COVID. And the faster we all collaborate and the greater we collaborate, then the faster we'll come through that. So can collaboration work in the supply chain? Absolutely. Is it working today? Yes, it is. And if you look at, I mean, there are many examples out there. Hope Consortium is one of them, where we have Agility, Etihad, SkyCell, the Department of Health, Via Medica. So everything from air freight partners, 3PLs, regulatory bodies, equipment providers, to in-country medical service providers have come together with a common goal. And that's why I think collaboration is absolutely a must have for this period of time. How long it stays behind after COVID, who knows? I think old habits will take over again, but that's good for the business as well.
Yeah, I think as we alluded to before, you fight for one common goal somehow. Huh? There's the need to get this behind us, and I remember we had discussions also with other LSPs where they started to think, okay, you have the footprint, we have the planes, let's combine that. We engaged into discussions with shipping lines where they saw that there wasn't a role to play for them initially. Because the speed was a requirement, and that's probably maybe that's something that Mr. Sanjeev can talk to a little bit later on. And we have warehouses in Africa. Can we store reefer containers in those warehouses just to make sure that we store them at the right condition? Or we can precondition this SkyCell solution, for instance, so that we can go further in country and make sure that the delivery is safe and timely. So I think those are great examples, and that's how. Somehow the penny fell with a lot of us. Maybe Mr. Sanjeev, could you get your views, because I know you're doing a lot into Africa at the moment. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I think let me start with a saying that we have in Africa, that if you want to go fast, you can go alone, but if you want to go far, then we will have to go together. So I really believe that, in the case of collaboration, it's not a matter of choice, it is a necessity, as it is through collaboration by all the members of the supply chain that we will be able to achieve resilience and an unbroken cold chain. So definitely in a continent like Africa, with all the challenges that we have, all the bureaucracies that we have, we really need to work in a collaborative effort. And this is something which is so important, because it's very difficult to find one organization that can actually come up with a perfect set of solutions for everybody, whether it's the transportation of vaccines or anything else which may be of a complex nature. So when you look at the entire task of delivering 800 million doses of vaccines to 54 countries in Africa, I can assure you that there is no single company, regardless of all the resources they may have, that can be able to do this by themselves. So it is through collaboration, it is through consolidation, and it is also through cooperation that we will be able to leverage our respective strengths so that we can ensure that we deliver the right solution.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think I like the part where you say, okay, you want to go fast, you go on your own, and you want to go long, you travel together. Murray, maybe from your side, how do you see things happening in a collaborative approach?
Yeah, well, I mean, as Robert also said, it's I mean, this is it is in itself, it's a unique historic moment that we are in. I mean, the whole world is having one objective, one goal, and that is, okay, how do we get ourselves out of this pandemic, right? So because everybody wants to go back to a normal life, or let's say, considering that pre-pandemic life was normal, but go back to some sort of a normal life. And I mean, the way we look at it, bottom line, what it's all about is that there's four elements to that. But bottom line, what it's all about is how do we get the vaccine from the manufacturer into the arm of the patient? And we call that supply chain, but in the end, that's what it's all about. And that comes back, at least this is how we look at it, and how I look at it. There's four elements to that. The first element is everybody's talking about cost. Sure, we need to control that. That is for sure. So let's make whatever we fly and truck or whatever, make it as light as possible, and reduce the amount of landfill and all that. So there's a cost element to it. The second part of it is time. There is a sense of urgency, right? This common goal is there. There's a sense of urgency. Let us work together. together. We have to work together to make it work, because in the end, we're all safe if at least 75% of the global population has been vaccinated. Below that, nobody is safe, right? And then the virus can still spread, the virus can still mutate, etc. So that is a sort of a sense of urgent that I call time. Then the last but not least, or the third element is scale, right? It's a global issue, and from the manufacturer to the arm of the patient, we as a community, right? And I mean the manufacturers, the packaging specialists, like a SkyCell, like including the logistics providers, the airline providers, everybody around here, and we have this common goal because we need to get 16 billion. Not million, billion doses from the manufacturers' places into the arm of the patients, and that is a scale that we have never seen before, and that is a huge challenge. So we need to adapt packaging for that. What I also expect, by the way, everybody's talking about what's going to happen, how is the world going to look like after the pandemic, but I think there's a couple of phases that we're going to see happening in the next year, because this pandemic and the vaccination need will remain for at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and it will remain after that because it will not go away. Every specialist you talk about and you listen to tell you this coronavirus is not going away, right? So in some shape or form, it will come back. I read this morning that I think also Pfizer is now considering to provide a third dose to increase even the effectiveness of the vaccine against any new Delta viruses or whatever. So that it will remain. We need to adapt packaging. We need to scale up as a community. We need to scale up from the small boxes that we send out with 1,000 doses. We need to scale up to shipping like 100,000 doses or 50,000 doses per pallet. That needs to happen. That is the next phase that I foresee. So that will change. It also means that the organization, how it's organized, will change. There's from the scale point of view, there's of course a huge challenge in underdeveloped countries, especially Africa. This is a huge challenge due to the poor infrastructure in many countries. So that is a subject in itself. I think we can fill 2 webinar days on Africa alone. Mm-hmm. And then I come to the fourth part of the collaboration is shortage. There is a shortage on everything. There's a shortage in manufacturing. They're doing what they can. There's a shortage in capacity, in freight. Everybody's doing what they can. Shortage in packaging. Are there enough containers available? All of that is happening. At the same time, I don't know what's happening, but somebody's buying. There's a shortage on many parts of that in that supply chain, but the most important part is we can produce billions of medicine, but we need to make sure, as I said in the beginning, what is being produced needs to end up in the arm of the patient, and it's our community objective that we make sure that none of that vaccine gets lost. Currently, and then I will close. I will give you 2 numbers here. Still today, between 4 and 6 or 7% of all the pharma containers that are being used around the globe, between 4 and 7% have temperature excursions. That is a fact. The data is there. I would please order the study that has been done by the University of St. Gallen. It's a very intensive and extensive study that has been done. Clearly, it shows what the temperature excursion rates for all the individual pharma containers are. It's data. It's fact-based data. That is a crucial. Why do we accept to have 6, 7, or 8% excursion rates with delays possible, even wasting product? Why do we accept that? We should not accept that. It has to be it has to be close to 0, as slow as possible. And as I already heard today, it is possible. Last but not least, talking about Africa, the World Health Organization published a study some years ago on how much vaccines actually wasted, actually gets lost, does not end up in the arm of the patient. And that is a staggering number of 40%. 40% of all the vaccines going to the underdeveloped countries did not end up in the patient's arm. For 25 variable reasons, as Andrew said earlier today, But that is something that needs to be addressed, because 40% means that the manufacturer is basically 40% of his capacity is not used in the proper way or cannot be used. And so that's a bit of the sort of a view that we as SkyCell have on this challenge. And again, I mean, we play just a humble role. We just provide very good and the most reliable pharma containers. That's what we do. But we're working together with everybody to make this happen, and we want to be, wherever we can, we want to be that valuable partner in that common goal, community supply chain.
Thanks, Eric. So you can have your safe flight, and I can take it forward from here.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you,
anything?
panelists. I'll follow up with you after. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
So I think we had a good insight from Mary as well on this, the collaboration part, that what are the areas which we can fix it together and can make like a secured cold chain and a much better, say, visible solution for the customers. Let's have the views from Mr. Santosh, because collaboration, this word we've been extensively discussing since yesterday. And what we realized that many of the pharma companies, the people participating from pharma company, they were talking about the sharing of information, the data, the visibility part, and that's what they feel like it's still something a challenge, and which will ease up their supply chain part. So can you share your thoughts, your views, how we can make this more efficient, and we can provide this end-to-end visibility to the community? Yeah.
Absolutely. I will build up on what Marie just said as well. I really like that. The three areas I want to touch on: collaboration, sustainability, and people. Let's start with collaboration. If you're a shipment, just walk through this with me. You're a shipment or a package. What do you want to say? I am here, I'm okay. Tomorrow, I'm over there, I'm not so okay. Maybe I'm not where I need to be. We just talk about 40% of waste Marie just mentioned there. What if I'm not where I should be? I should be in Kenya, but for some reason, I'm in Uganda right now. Who's looking after me? Does somebody know? I'm putting my hand up saying, I'm not where I should be. Who's looking after me? I am now in Kenya, but I should be kept at 2 degrees, between 2 and 8. I'm actually at 7 right now. I'm sending a warning signal. Guys, somebody look at me. If I go to 8 and if I stay there for more than an hour, you have to throw me away. And I'll contribute that 40%. Who's listening to that? The voice of the package. So if your packages, your shipments, your box of vaccines could talk, what would they say to you? And who's listening? So that voice, those signals coming in from your packages, that's what Rombi tracks. Now just imagine we track every single package, as we just said, from the manufacturer to the arm of the patient, full mile to the last mile. What if you could listen to the package all the way through? That broken chain of custody from manufacturer, freight forwarder, maybe it's a ship, it's customs, it's the last mile guy, whoever is handling that package. Maybe it's going to a warehouse, to the 3PL warehouse. That chain of custody needs a thread, a common thread. That common thread is data. It's a signal from that package, that voice of the package. Now just imagine that thread is then enhanced by all the players. So for example, from SkyCell, the data coming in from the containers that they're providing enriches that data. From Agility, they are handling, they've handed over to Customs. Customs office, we are handling, here's the paperwork. It's gone to the warehousing, it's there, it's going to be dispatched tomorrow. How powerful would that be? That the manufacturer knows, I've shipped this package today and it's going to be there tomorrow. Take it the other way around. What about your patient, your hospital, your government? They can look at the same data and know what's coming in and where it is. That thread is what Rombi provides. It's not just us, many others provide it, but that's what we look to do. We want to bring that common, it's basically the Rosetta Stone, the translation matrix across everybody. And that's where collaboration starts. When you put data, very, very hard fact, you know what things are, we can all start collaborating. So that collaboration to me is really key. And I think what was said earlier on in the panel as well, where we saw that real-time visibility, what Rombi provides. So tracking devices, that gives you a signal, but how that signal is enriched and transformed in the platform and gives you alerts and visibility and analytics. What we found was a year ago, 2 years ago, in most cases, it was an innovation topic. It was a nice to have. Let's play around with a bit of IoT, a bit of devices. During the pandemic, what became very obvious, that moved from being an innovation topic, a play with topic, to a must-have topic. And we've now to the next curve already. It's not even a must-have, it's a hygiene factor. It's a basic necessity. You just need to have visibility because you need to know where your shipments are. And by the way, it's not just for vaccines or COVID, it's across all the supply chain. With the disruptions we've seen, the need for data becomes very, very relevant. Now, just imagine that thread of data becomes the common language that all the players can start contributing to. That's what we think is collaboration. Are we there? No. Are we getting there? Absolutely. We've seen enough projects where we're seeing multiple 3PL providers talking to each other, governments talking to each other, sharing the data across the whole supply chain, starting to get that piece where they realize, you know what? Yes, I'm foregoing something, but I'm gaining far more. And is that sustainable? I think this was mentioned as well. We've gone through a big hoo-ha right now. Everybody needs to do this because it's COVID, it's our life, it's actually our life directly. It's a health of the whole planet, of the economy. What happens when it starts to die down in a year or two? Does that mean we just go back, we twang back like the elastic, it goes back to previous learning? Probably. And I firmly believe that the only way to make sure that doesn't happen is through people. People like myself, like the panelists, people listening. If people are willing to make that sacrifice, to step forward and say, you know what, I will forego some of my profit of tomorrow to have a better world because we will build a better business. That's how it happens. People talking to people and actually wanting to make that happen. And once that momentum is there, that learned behavior of collaboration is there, that's when it becomes sustainable. So that's what we're looking at. So as I said, Rombi, we provide the basic, the technology, that Rosetta Stone, that translation matrix, that collaboration, that fine line through data that everybody can rely on, everybody can contribute to, and everybody can share.
Thank you, Santosh. I think you touched upon the right aspect of the collaboration, and I think the Rombi solution is the active link actually, if in the real sense, which can actually provide. And on a personal note, I can say that I always had a wish that if a person who was traveling, who has been traveling from one part to another, if that person can speak up, and then he is not comfortable with that environment, or he's not comfortable, then why can't the shipment speak? And
exactly.
So that's what I think. The talking shipment is like something as maybe that's what we are future, and you have already touched that point. Let's have some insight from Thomas on like UNICEF. We know that you people are actively engaged and globally on providing the humanitarian, the logistics to various parts of the world. And since you are not into the manufacturing part, so you have various suppliers which are located and spread across the world. How do you qualify, and what strategies do you apply, like when you are sourcing these material from the various parts, and so that you have your most efficient supplies to be and when it is needed, basically. Over to you, Thomas.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So, I mean, first of all, I think it's important to recognize that vaccines and immunization is a public good, and hence it is very much across the world focused in the public arena, so the government-controlled supply chains to a large extent, or you can say that the governments in general have an interest in making sure that these supply chains indeed are working. So the UNICEF strategy across is to strengthen government systems. How then governments are organizing themselves differ from place to place. By and large, however, you can say that at the country level, the distribution that is happening there, by and large, is in the public sector domain. So where the private sector is involved is for providing the equipment, the different devices that is needed, while the distribution as such, the warehousing and others are organized within the government's systems. So when you are asking about how is UNICEF supporting these strategies, it very much goes into how do we strengthen the government system to manage you can say, this supply chain. I think in the current context, I would say in general, and again, when you talk globally, I mean, you have a tendency to talk in general terms, but in general terms, the existing supply chain for distributing vaccines are actually quite well established in most countries, and it does reflect that immunization and vaccine is the backbone of a public health systems. Where the systems are being challenged is exactly as we are discussing here today, is when either you have a stretch of the existing capacity, so you have much more vaccines coming into the system. So that is one variable to work with. The other variables that we are also coping with is what happens when the vaccine suddenly needs to be distributed and managed from different standards. So normally it is from 2 to 8 degrees, sometimes up to minus 20 degrees. We have now vaccines in the COVID response that is going up to minus 80 degrees, the Pfizer vaccine, that suddenly needs to have totally different standards in the system, which of course is shaking some of those resilient buildings that has been established over decades in the government system and the supporting private system. And then the last variable, and I think this is also what is being discussed by many of the fellow panel members here, is the uncertainty. I mean, things has been turned upside down, but in really practical terms here, when are the vaccines actually coming? Are they delayed, or is it this vaccine, or is it the other vaccines that are arriving? And much of it is coming from a very dynamic picture of when are vaccines being released, authorized. Do we suddenly have a picture of side effects emerging? So a vaccine is being taken out of the equation. So it's this adaptability across the board that really needs to be handled. So I think to summarize here, quite stable systems that are being established and resilient buildings, and the building that has been built for a number of years. And then the challenges when things are deviating from that, because of new cold chain standards, because of the uncertainty of when vaccines are actually arriving, and then yeah, so those the primary things there. So let's just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. You have actually explained it very well, that how the system works when it comes to the humanitarian logistics and working with such a complex, supplies, how efficiently you manage this along with the various governmental agencies, health agencies, and thanks for your insight. And so the next question is to Mr. Krishna Kumar on the logistics front. Like Mr. KK, you come from an extensive experience in the field of logistics. You've been working in the market, and then so what are the different, say, your views on the collaboration part, that over the period, what are the changes which has made? If you can share some of the success stories of the collaboration part, and which are the areas where we need to work upon and fix these gaps, and so that like we can be like more successful, and we can make a more seamless supplies.
So let me start with this whole track theme, which is collaboration, right? So although we are actually supposed to have this track running today, I think we've heard more mention of the word collaboration in all the 3 tracks that we've had before this, right? So it just shows how important this topic is, and how everybody in the supply chain really needs to come together to kind of realize that final objective of getting the vaccine into the arms of the patient, wherever that person is, and in a safe and efficacious manner. So from a perspective of a 3PL company, for us who are in 3PL, we always have to do a certain amount of collaboration, right? Because none of us work in all sectors that our customers need us to provide services in. So we all work with transportation-based collaborators. We use each other's services sometimes. We have vendors, suppliers, and different kinds of stakeholders. But I think what we are realizing now in this kind of situation is that there's a whole new set of stakeholders that we need to work with. So, just use the diversity of this panel as an example, where you have NGOs, you have data companies, you have foundations, you have airline companies, and you have 3PL providers. And I think that is really that's really highlighting the importance of what kind of different stakeholders are now have to come together, have to work together, and have to provide that final have to provide a solution to achieving that final objective. So, like Santosh was talking about, that thread of information which carries information about movement of the vaccine from the manufacturer right up to the location where the patient is actually receiving that dose, is something that everybody should be contributing to. So it's not just one data company that contributes to. The logistics service provider has his own information and events and physical flows that can contribute to that kind of information. The manufacturer obviously has their own information. The data companies have their own information. The airlines, and I'm thinking in the future, even shipping lines, transport companies, these are all going to contribute. So one of the obvious areas that I think we have gaps in is that everybody has their information sitting in their own silos, and I think there is an urgent need really for a collaborative kind of information say data warehouse for people to contribute into, either by connecting into that kind of a cloud-based system, for example, or by inputting data from their system or automating it in some way, so that actually people can kind of contribute into an information highway, irrespective of what kind of services they're providing, or irrespective of what kind of stakeholder they are in this whole chain. So I think that is one of the real information requirements that we need to address, and probably that is something that can be taken up by one of the global forums that you have that actually can facilitate this kind of thing. So maybe something to think about, because I think this is going to be around for the next 2 or 3 years at least. And then, like one of the panelists mentioned, there will be some continuity in terms of the requirement of vaccines to be provided or booster shots to be provided over a period of time. The other thing that I think we need to all emphasize is that what kind of mindset do we really need as companies, as individuals, as participants in this whole process of collaboration. We need to really have an open mindset about this. We need to be very flexible about this, and we have to really come together and put aside, at least to an extent, individual organizational gain to really move towards this overall objective. Because I think the faster that we eliminate or at least bring the pandemic down to a controllable level, the better it is for all of us. And like some of the panelists mentioned in the earlier comments, I think that everybody will probably go back to exhibiting some of their old behavior in the future when this is under control. But at this point of time, I also personally think that nobody really knows when this is going to be under control, right? We all thought that a year back when vaccines actually started to get deployed, or we're going to be deployed in the end of 2020, etc. Maybe in 1 year, things will get back to a little bit of norm. Now we're saying next year, but we really don't know, right? I mean, we are seeing variants of the vaccine, we are seeing new forms of the virus coming up, and that might be a challenge in the future as well. So we don't know. And we also don't know whether, like someone said, what actually the new normal is going to be. Are we going back to the old ways of our general life, or is this something that's going to remain with us, and that we still have to take some kind of precaution, even if it's not very drastic, etc. So I think there is learnings in this for us, for the future. We need to really approach this with an open, flexible mindset. We need to be prepared to share information. We need to be prepared to, I think, give up some individual company or organizational benefits to work together and understand how we can actually provide this solution. For us, we have been involved in some part of the vaccine distributions as a company in India. And one of the things that I think we also need to do is to actually try new solutions. It might be untested. It might be something that you have to deploy, really quickly. But I think that kind of mindset, the organizations have to be able to support deployment of new solutions very fast It may not be fully tested, etc., because you don't really have the time to do this, and because getting the vaccines to where they need to be is the most important and most urgent thing at this point of time. So that's really, my big points would be new players and new stakeholders that you need to really collaborate with. Get your thoughts and minds open, and be prepared to participate fully. Be prepared to experiment a little bit and learn from mistakes. And I think that we all need to keep in mind that this is not a short-term thing. I think, in my opinion, I think it's going to be here for a few more years, and we need to really learn how to deal with that going forward. And collaborating between all these people, I think, is the only way forward for getting the world to be a better place, or at least going back to as much as it was before in the years before COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, KK. Really appreciate your views. You touched upon this, the interesting mantra, like the new collaboration word, like which has been like very often discussed in all the panels and with everyone, like talking about it. And yeah, the new normal is something which is yet to come. So we are still not, we are not very clear. And with collaboration, definitely we can catch hold of, like we can be prepared for it. Yeah. So coming to the next question to Mr. Rahul. Rahul doesn't come from the logistics background, but he's been actively engaged in the corporate partnership, resource mobilization with UNICEF India. We would like to have his views. What are his say thoughts basically with this the pandemic and the collaborating thing, and which he can share it with the group. Over to you, Rahul.
Sure. Thank you, Rituparna. And I mean, a lot has been said by the panelists, but I specifically just want to pick what Thomas mentioned about very kind of well-established systems. And there are times when these systems are challenged for different reasons. And this time it was kind of COVID and the pandemic. And then sometimes these could lead to a complete shift into the system, and a new system needs to be established. And I think those are the times which are not business as usual, where different organizations, different stakeholders need to come together and collaborate. So I think the question is probably not can the logistic industry collaborate, but how the logistic industry collaborate. And that's the question we need to answer. And I think collaboration does not mean we don't compete, because we know in the industry, competition also leads to a lot of innovation, and it helps us optimize resources and be more effective in the work we do. So I think we're looking at competition and collaboration, which is what we call as co-opetition, where each of the partners in that collaboration brings their expertise, their strengths, their resources, and we together are able to solve a challenge which is big enough for an individual player to address. And even if we look at kind of UNICEF being one of the umbrella organization which has a lot of experience in working around emergencies, provides that space for different competitors and different players from an industry to come and work together. And as my role is to bring those corporates together, we always try to make sure we are creating enough value for all the partners who come into the partnership. And also just to look at the whole kind of logistics industry, it is not a very traditional industry how it used to be probably a couple of decades ago. You know, we're talking about kind of technology companies, we're talking about data analytic companies, we're talking about a very different logistic company. And that is also leading to a lot of disruption in the industry. So I think by coming together, different players are learning from each other. They're also building new expertise, building new resilience to be able to react to some of these pandemics and these new challenges, which are becoming more and more often. And as UNICEF, we always reach out to corporates, we always reach out to kind of different players, so we can leverage their expertise for us to be able to respond to emergencies and similar pandemics. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. Now the floor is open, like for anyone who wants to voluntarily speak about something as a business case, some success story, or some thoughts basically. So anyone who can pick up, raise the hand, and you can take the floor. Anything which comes in your mind as an industry initiative, or some anything on the collaboration aspect, or maybe some new thoughts.
I'll respond to that first, if that's okay. So I think there's been a lot of talk about collaboration and logistics and the different ecosystem, but and this was a point that was touched on earlier. The key role of collaboration is not so much to do what we do better today, but it's actually to do more. So how do we make sure that the stakeholders in the collaboration framework provide value, create value which didn't exist before? And this is particularly relevant for vaccine distribution. So if by a group of logistics companies come together and move vaccines from point A to point B in a much better way, in a much greater scale, does that really help us move through this pandemic? Then, because it doesn't get it to the arm of the patient. So we really need to think about how the countries and the states are structuring their vaccination programs and working in partnership with them. So bringing them into the collaborative discussions to make sure that the stakeholders understand and appreciate the length and the breadth of the supply chain, which includes healthcare professionals, field hospitals, upstream, midstream, downstream solutions. So there's a whole myriad of different stakeholders required outside of what might be traditionally considered as a supply chain. I think that's where the value is going to come from collaboration in this instance. Just having that openness and appreciation of the scale of the event. The second point I think we need to really consider is, and this is where data comes in, because data is absolutely critical to us. Vaccines are in short supply, no secret. All of the countries need them. So if a country needs 5 million vaccines and has immediate access to vaccines, their natural reaction would be to take those vaccines, which increases the risk of wastage. So our role in the supply chain is to help the countries by providing them with sufficient reassurance and stock holding up and down the supply chain that we can operate a hub and spoke model using data from vaccines which have been used in the field to trigger replenishment. And that's where the value, again, of data, a digital supply chain and a physical supply chain must come together. So there are a couple of discussion points, I think, for the panel.
Thank you, Robert, for taking this and talking about this, your thoughts, and it's a sense of the hour. So I think with this new normal, I think these learnings are also very, very important, because as we progress these structural changes, the partnership programs, the learning from each other's and the sharing of the data. So these are like some of the key points, I think. Anyone else from the floor would like to speak on any open topic, anything, any of his thoughts?
I think just to echo what Robert just said there, I 100% agree to that. That data need to trigger. We need to have the data, as I said before, as a Rosetta Stone, the common language. What will happen is, if you think about the commercial world, what happened, what was needed in the commercial world triggered a whole lot of change behavior. If the customer wants something or needs something, you will find the players collaborating to bring that value to the customer. And now we have the customer are every single person on the planet now. And that change behavior is something that, as I keep saying, as I've said before, we need to do that ourselves. And there's always that fear of competition. Am I going to open up my kimono and show it to my competitor what I'm doing? I'm going to lose faith, I'm going to lose face, I'm going to lose market share. But that first step has already been taken. It's not I think as somebody said earlier on, it's not a choice, it's a must-have. So my wish is that everybody is willing to take that first step. That first step, you are the dance, you're the first one on the dance floor. You think you can make a fool of yourself. Maybe you will, maybe you'll fall down, maybe you will pick yourself up and start dancing again. We must not be afraid to try new things and fail and learn and try again and again. If we try to talk to each other and it doesn't work first time round, let's go back again. Guys, this is not an option. It is, we have to do this. We need to find a way. And we need to find a way that works for everybody, of course. And it will take time. It will not be easy, but we will get there. And if you think about, I use that example badly. If you think about the big, massive problems that happen in the world, if it's the world wars or massive pandemic, they triggered change behavior, they triggered innovation, they triggered different ways of thinking. And I think this is our moment here. Our generation here is at this cusp where there's a global pandemic, but we now have technology, we have communication, we have ways of talking to each other and a willingness to make a difference. And I keep going back to all this conversation. Technology, what Rombi provides, phenomenal. There's services that all the 3PLs, the freight forwarders, the agilities, the DHL of the world provide, incredible. But all that will be for nothing unless people decide to make the difference. It needs to be a Robert, a Santosh, a Rahul, a Marie who decide, I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to pick up the phone and say, can I do that actually? This is what Eric said earlier on, where he saw agility started talking to, I think, DHL. We've got capacity. You've got the volume to bring things through. Can we work together? That is when it would happen. And then that's our scaling out. Now, it is happening already. We're seeing that with quite a few of our customers on the commercial side. I would love to see that more happening here in this worldwide pandemic. So that was just my 2 cents in terms of, it's not the next guy who's going to do it. We're not turning around and says, it's Joe Bloggs down the road. He's going to be doing it. It's you, it's I, it's me. We need to take ownership of this problem and be willing to do that change.
Thanks, Santosh. I can say, yes, please. Yeah.
Ritu, yes, I just wanted to give some insights from an African point of view, because I've just had a flashback to the last 20 years of all the flights that we've actually done within Africa for vaccines, for organizations such as UNICEF, WHO, and we've really sort of had a lot of experiences, but I really believe that the biggest challenge in Africa lies in the last mile implementation. And do remember one thing, that vaccines do not save lives, vaccinations saves lives. And this is a very important point that we've actually learned, because the entire supply chain can be as good as you can get it up to the point of delivery, whether the delivery is to the airport or to a clinic. But what we've really seen is a very important statement that Marie mentioned about the high wastage of vaccines in Africa. And it is true to such an extent that I might have taken both my jabs of the Covishield vaccine in Nairobi. But in all honesty, I really don't even know whether the vaccines will have the same level of efficacy compared to somebody who might have actually had it in Europe, for that matter. And we really believe that there are certain things which work very well, and there are certain things which don't work very well. But I think the point over here is that if we look at the importance of data, and this is where I really appreciate what Santosh has said, what Marie has said about the importance of data. And I think this is so important because we always have an issue when it comes to transparency and visibility. And these are the two areas where we are totally lost as a continent, because we've really never had the transparency and visibility, because there's always been a level of mistrust or lack of information in the last mile. So what we really feel is that, again, a lot has been said about collaboration. I agree with each and every one of them, but I really believe that data is very powerful, and it is through data that we can actually be able to make sure that the cold chain is as fresh and honorable, to actually make sure that the last mile is actually done in the right way, so that the person who is actually going to get the vaccine has the same level of confidence that I do, that whatever has actually happened, I will be protected. And if you look at all the statistics which one talks about Africa, yes, it is not very promising. We have a large continent. We have 54 countries, each with different sets of regulations, customs procedures, and again, it's quite a challenge. And we've transported the Ebola vaccines in the DRC. We've transported the cholera vaccines in Yemen, and at every point of the way, we do whatever has to be done on the basis of good faith. That once the vaccines have reached the airport, then what happens after that is somebody else's responsibility. But at some point in time, we're also looking at technology. We have recently started a drones business in Kenya, which has been approved by the Civil Aviation Authority. One of the things that we want to do is how can we use drones to complete the last mile delivery in a manner in which there is full transparency and visibility. So you're actually looking at the airport and the port not being the final point of delivery. You're looking at now getting to the clinic, getting to the hospital, and actually looking at what value proposition you can actually be able to do. And this is just to make sure that the person who is actually receiving the vaccine or the medical items, or it could even be food for that matter, that he receives it at the shortest period of time and in a manner in which it is safe and secure. So this is just a flashback of the last 20 years of what we've been doing in Africa. And I just thought it'll be useful for the panelists and for the delegates to know that it's not really the supply chain, it is the last mile, which is even more important than the supply chain.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Good insight, and I think you rightly touched upon the last mile part, because this has been the discussion in some of the other forums as well. Because that is like in the complete supply chain, it's only the last mile which leads to say which is say vulnerable to say more than 50% as a damage of the product. So that's something which is a good learning. And we know that we all come from a human intensive industry. So it's something, until unless we agree to do it together, like there's no shortcut to it. This is something which we will have to agree to, that yes, we partner, we collaborate together, and we make it successful. I think Mary has something to say. Yes.
As usual, Rita, I always have something to say. No, it's not so much that I need to say something, but I would like to express a wish here, right? And my wish is a famous saying is, if you want to change something, people used to stick to old behavior, right? That's how humans are. You stick to human behavior. Well, how do you change behavior? That only changes if something dramatic happens. Right, that is sort of a common knowledge, and I do believe, and I wish that that what happens to us now, this pandemic, that it will bring some good for all of us, for the entire community, because change is needed now. No doubt, we need to change. If we as a community we stick to the same solutions that we had before, with all its pitfalls and all accepted loopholes and mistakes, and we keep on accepting that, we will not solve this problem. We need to change the way we did the business, and especially when it comes to pharma, medicine, this area, guys, this is not an ordinary football game, right? That we had before. This is the Olympics. This is the Olympics. Vaccines are the Olympics, and it's the Olympics in triple. Why? Because we're not talking about vaccines as we did in the past, 2 to 8. Fine, you get a perfect container, ship it over, control it a bit, collect some data, some loggers, and that was it. No, now we are talking about vaccines, mind you, in 3 or 4 different temperature zones, not just 2 to 8. It's 2 to 8, 15, 25, minus 15, minus 20, minus 50, minus 6. This is the Olympic Games of the medicine field. And I do hope that we learn something from that. That a lot of good new developments come from this. It also, I do hope that things get changed, and that we finally achieve that total integration of data integration that is highly needed, especially in the underdeveloped countries, where we can actually say right now we have all these guidelines, right? GDP and GMP, we have all that, right? Every logistics professional knows what I mean by that. But really use that by providing it not only for those countries who can afford it, but to everybody, to the global community, because then we solve this problem and provide this trust to every patient around the world that needs the vaccines, not only the COVID vaccines, but there will be, also the regular vaccines, that they can trust the medicine, because the trust can be based on data collected from the entire supply chain. Everybody is doing his piece in the supply chain, collecting the data from the manufacturer to the doctor or the nurse that actually administers the vaccine into the patient's arm. If that data is collected, we build I mean, we as a community, not SkyCell as a pharma container provider, but we as a community, we build trust in vaccines, and I think, and that is the change that I wish, and the change that I hope for, because in the end, that's going to make this a better world.
Thank you, Mari. With this, I think we have some of the good learnings out of the session. Some of the bullet points like which I could manage is the transparency is something which is we often talked about. That's something as a learning, and we have to adapt to it. The sharing of the data, willingness to change, the last mile part, and we had like a uniform system, like where we have the basically the sharing of the data. Yeah, I think with that we can summarize the session. And yes,
Rahul wants to add something. Rahul has raised his hand, and you may want to check with Thomas also before we have time for you all.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So no
Thank you. I mean, this was more, I wanted to use this as an opportunity to also invite our, participants and panel members to kind of come, and if there are ways you can support our work with your in-kind kind of, your supply chains, etc. Please do reach out. We would really love to kind of have your support. And we have seen how we were able to do a lot more with our kind of partners in responding to COVID. The pandemic is still very much there. And if there are ways through your supply chains, funding, etc., you can support, would love to kind of pick that discussion with you.
Sure, Ram. Yeah, thanks. Thomas, you want to add something here?
Yeah, maybe just a few reflections at the end. And first of all, very much appreciate the industry contributions here and the willingness to support, and that is very much needed. And as Rahul was summarizing before, I mean, we need everything that we can get in terms of support. Just one word maybe of caution a little bit, and maybe also that we are not getting too, pessimistic in our views on how existing systems are actually functioning, because there are a number of quite well-functioning systems. If you just look into India, for instance, have massive experiences managing these vaccination campaigns at scale. Just think about the polio eradication efforts that the countries has gone through decades, where each round of NID's National Immunization Day has involved 200 million doses. So you have all your small children population covered with vaccines, and you've done that repeatedly 4, 5, 6, 8 times sometimes in some of the larger states per year. So the capacity of the system is there to roll out these things at scale. So I think that is one observation there, and we have to be careful that in our eagerness to find solutions, that we are not trying to fix something that is not broken. So I think it's important that we quite quickly, as we discuss these things, are looking at which areas of the supply chain can actually be optimized. And I think Robert was making an extremely important point early on that, okay, this is the logistics system, but it has to interface also with the public administration system that is administrating these vaccines, that goes to the end user at the end of the day. And how do we merge these? So have to be careful that we're not coming with solutions that may not have problems directly attached to them. So that is one thing. Maybe the last thing I just want to challenge a little bit is the notion of very high vaccine wastage rates in the system. And of course, it is something that we need to be very careful about. But when we look into the average figures of wastage rate, it is for the penny vaccines where you have relatively high rates of wastage here, and it is typically where you have multi-doses in the vaccine. And and what happens is at the last mile, if you do not have sufficient number of children showing up for the immunization session, when you have opened the vial because of the preservatives in the vaccines, you have to throw out the vaccine. And that is really a balancing act between what is your logistics distribution vis-a-vis what's the cost of producing a specific vaccines? When you look into the more expensive vaccines, some of the normal vaccine, rota vaccines that are being introduced for the moment, the wasted rate is below 10%. And when we do the planning around the COVAX or the COVID vaccine, we talk about 5%. So more to get the proportions in place when we discuss these things. I just wanted to make that sort of input to the discussion. Over.
Thanks, Thomas. I think that's a right input from your side, that the proportionate, we need to do the analytics of the proportionate of the wastage for each of the vaccine, because everyone, the temperature conditions are different, their nature and the need is also different. So that's the key. So with that, I can
there is one question on the Q&A. Maybe either KK or Santosh or anyone wants to take it. This is from Siju. How do you foresee the future of cold chain market change going to happen? Will it be more of investment in technology or more in infrastructure, brick and mortar build setup? I don't know if someone wants to take that one question.
I can briefly give you some pointers on that, and then maybe somebody else wants to contribute as well. I think investment in cold chain is going to be a combination of both brick and mortar, because you cannot avoid physical infrastructure in providing cold chain. So if you have to build up warehouses or if you have built up transportation systems, then obviously you need to have physical infrastructure in terms of warehouses, temperature control solutions, temperature controlled transportation solutions, etc. And in order for us to be able to support that with information and data that can be provided back to customers, the investment in information technology also will be required. So I think these are things that go together. Although what we now see in terms of visibility and what we actually value the most is information. I think there has to be supporting physical infrastructure in the background to be able to provide that information and the visibility that customers and manufacturers and finally the end users are also looking for.
And if I can add on that, sorry, Thomas, I think you were first.
Go ahead, Santosh.
Oh, I was just going to pick up on what Thomas said. If I take the example of the UK, when at the peak of the pandemic last year for us in the UK, we created, I think it was 3 or 4 of those Nightingale hospitals, massive hospitals to cater for the volume of expected patients coming in. And in the end, they were not used to the capacity that was expected. And what Thomas said is the capacity already is there in the infrastructure, in the supply chain. It's a question of looking at what's there and how are we utilizing them correctly? And do we manage the flow correctly? Of course, volumes will always increase. We always need to invest into new technologies, new methods of doing things. But we really need to look at what we already have and are we deploying our assets correctly? And again, it goes back, I'll harp on about the same thing, data. What do we have now? Are we using it correctly? With the planned demand that's coming through, are we okay? And what do we need to build before we start rushing and building huge amounts? I'll take a couple of other examples. We are seeing a lot of demand right now to track temperatures in fridges for thousands, literally tens of thousands of fridges worldwide. Why? Because we need to store those vaccines. To Thomas's point, it's last mile. It's not gone there, but we can't just use them straight away. It might take 2 to 3 months. Now, do we have the infrastructure in place to store those medications, vaccines at the right temperature and the right conditions until they're needed? And that data is something that we are seeing. One point we haven't talked about at all, I'll just leave that as the last point, is the whole reverse logistics as well. Now, to talk about, I think Sanjeev was mentioning that and Rahul mentioned that as well, the trust in the vaccine. We're seeing a lot of counterfeits going in, a lot of theft and diversion of stocks and the empty vials being used. We need to really have a look at how do we do the reverse logistics. Thinking about how do we get it into the arm of the patient is one thing. We need to safely then look at disposal of waste and disposal of used vials as well to make sure we keep the trust very, very high. But that's probably the second conversation we need to have later on. But I think the logistics supply chain community is also responsible to make sure that it is happening correctly.
Thanks, Santosh. Ritu, let me jump in and ask Sanjeev one relevant question for the industry is that, Sanjeev, I know your flights don't come to India, but you have interline collaboration with some of the carriers. And for us as service providers, we have one bit of fear is that when it moves from carrier A to B, how is the handling happening? And maybe you can throw light, because Africa is a big market for India. We are definitely looking at it. And Astral is someone who can really do wonders, because you understand pharma better than most of them. So maybe you want to throw some light, because we are fortunate to have another 4 minutes in the session, and it will answer many questions of uncertainty to collaboration.
Thank you, Satish. I remember that when we had our first shipment of the COVID-19 vaccines from Mumbai, the first leg from Mumbai to Nairobi was actually done on an Air India passenger flight, which brought the vaccines from Mumbai to Nairobi, and then we brought the syringes from Dubai to Nairobi, and then we combined the two in our warehouse, and then moved it to South Sudan and also into Yemen. Subsequent to that, we also did flights also out of Mumbai. But what you mentioned, Satish, is very important, because our collaboration with Air India allowed us to move the vaccines in a cost-effective and in an efficient manner, in which we brought everything from Mumbai to Nairobi, put it into the cold storage facility, provided full transparency and visibility to UNICEF, and also to UNICEF's framework partner, Co2 Neutral. So it really worked very well. But having said that, there are other options. The same vaccines could have actually been, the same vaccines would have moved to Dubai or Abu Dhabi, and then we would have actually moved it from there into Africa. And I really believe that it is through such partnerships. And a good example is what Robert has actually created out of Abu Dhabi. It's actually meant to make sure that the entire end-to-end solution for vaccines is as reliable and efficient as possible. So that so what that really means is that you do not really need to fly to India to pick up vaccines from Covishield or from Covaxin and bring it to Africa. It could actually be done by another airline, and all you have to do is just make sure that the interline partnerships that you have enables a very reliable and efficient transshipment. And we're very fortunate that in Nairobi, we have approximately 8,000 square meters of cold storage facility at the Nairobi airport, which was actually built for our flowers and for our vegetable exports. So we were able to make sure that we were able to safeguard that. But in a continent of 54 countries, you'll actually be surprised that there are only 5 airports in Africa which can actually handle the vaccines consolidation at the airside. And this is also a very big challenge that we have. So we need to actually work with hubs in the Middle East. We need to also work with hubs, the 5 hubs in Africa, so that we can actually be able to reach the airports where the cold storage facilities does not exist, but just to actually make sure that the entire supply chain is as reliable and efficient as possible. So this is really my contribution, Satish. I hope you found it useful. And this is actually based on a real-time experience of transporting the Covishield vaccines from Mumbai into South Sudan. And I think it really worked very well with the collaboration between ourselves, Co2 Neutral, and Air India, to actually make sure that that particular consignment of 132,000 doses were delivered efficiently and in a safe manner.
No, I definitely answered that. I see Thomas raising his hand as well. But I think the reason that we have Robert on this panel also is that India's extended hub is not sitting in India, but is actually sitting outside India. And that's the reality that I've always spoken about on various forums, that we are so dependent on Middle East, where we know the temperature is high, but their efficiency in terms of handling cargo in the transshipment, be it at Abu Dhabi or Dubai or Qatar or any of the airports, is really appreciated. Maybe Thomas, you want to add something before we end the session, because you raised your hand.
Yeah, just very quickly here at the end, and I was struggling to find my mute button before, but I was answering the questions, very good questions, whether we foresee increased investment in infrastructure or innovation. Just to give a little bit of background on the investment that has been made globally in the last 4 or 5 years under what is called the Cold Chain Equipment Optimization Platform, CCOP, where around 100,000 fridges has been procured and installed globally. And you can say that that investment was extremely timely given this global emergency. And I mean, I hate to say that it was pure luck. And of course it was not, it was due diligence made in the anticipation of new vaccines coming in, but it really served the purpose very well for the moment. Will there be increased investments in infrastructure? Yes, that will be continued. It is a continued program, and it might also be accelerated given the pandemic situation that we have now. And we do have some established system, and we benefit from having that partner collaboration in the 4 or 5 years that has already gone with these investments globally. So we are quite comfortable on that side from a UNICEF perspective. The other part of the question, I think, is a very interesting one on the innovation, and it links into, I think was Santosh mentioning it earlier, on some of the innovation that can be introduced. So the commodities. So when you look into the fridges and the freezers, start to get devices incorporated into them. So how do I feel today in terms of my temperature? And the next steps, well, I mean, and the reason why I feel bad, is that because my compressor is not working? Is it because there is shade that is coming into my solar devices? So the equipment start to speak to you, and that also means that from a maintenance point of view, for instance, instead of doing random sampling, you can actually go targeted to where the problems actually are. So you start to have much more investments in these innovation parts here. And if I had to look into the crystal ball for the next five years on this one is really picking up on including this type of devices into the equipment, and then establish your system next to them that can respond to them as the data start to speak. Let me just stop there.
Thanks, Thomas. I think very good insights given by Sanjeev, you and rest of them. And we always had this debate in agility. And KK, my colleague, is here, whether we put infrastructure first or we get the cargo first. And that's always been a debate. So 5 years ago, we fortunately were the first to put our pharma competency centers in Hyderabad for air and for ocean in Mumbai. And today we know our situation is that we've been overwhelmed with cargo coming into when you have the infrastructure. And surely you need to put infrastructure. And people will see what value it brings into. So I think very good inputs to that question that have come in. Ritu, I had to jump in. Sorry, unless KK has something, now you can take over the session.
Yeah, so I think the investment part, like what we just spoke about, that what the learning over the period is very, very clear that the pharma industry or pharma vertical for a logistics, it's other way around, where you need to have the infrastructure which can be qualified, validated by the customer, and then only you have the cargo. So obviously these are the investments with the increased need of the temperature sensitive products, with the sensitive products now being introduced. Obviously this need will increase, and there will be more companies collaborating and investing into such building up more the cold chain infrastructure. So with here, like we can hand over the mic to Karvi to summarize, and then we can take it forward from there.
Thank you, Ritu sir. Well, of course, collaboration is going to be the key moving forward for the supply chain industry. And hopefully we're going to see a lot more collaboration and a tightly knit supply chain industry. Now, this has brought us to the end of UBCC 2021, the 4th edition of Agility's Thought Leadership event. I would like to thank all our speakers for taking out time from their busy schedules and enlightening us with their valuable insights. And I'm sure that all of these insights will be considered by the industry to build a future-ready and unbreakable cold chain. I would also like to thank our audiences for joining us on this virtual discussion. And of course, a special thanks to all our sponsors, Emirates Sky Cargo, Qatar Airways Cargo, Turkish Cargo, GMR Cargo, Cargo Service Center, Kempegowda International Airport, Bangalore, DFW International Airport, Adani, SkyCell, Delhi International Airport, Vecutech, Del Monte, Celebi, ITLN, Cargo Talk, Gubba Cold Storage, Novotel, and ISCM. Without our sponsors, this event would have not been possible. Thank you. Now I would like to give the charge to Satish sir to give a concluding remark. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Kavi. The reason that we had to this year do virtually, but what we've done as UBCC is also to tell you all that we decided not to take any sponsorship amount from any of our partners who've supported in the past in this COVID times. So technically, we've done this in respect of all the people who have lost their lives, and also we thought it's important that we support the industry during these times. But to put this event together, I thought it's important to really appreciate the effort of my team members who worked tirelessly to get this event together. So Ritu, Sanika, and Mayur, thank you so much for really putting all the effort to get the show back again and make it virtual, but help us together. I don't know whether you all can see the slides or.
We can see the next slide.
Okay, fine. So UBCC team, thank you so much. Gaurav, Karvi, Parminder, Tariq, and Sunish for also helping us out in this program, being a part of the whole research part of it, putting our white papers together and the script. And you've always been a part of this event, so thank you so much to you all once again, and look forward for your support. Thank you for joining us this year. See you next year at UBCC 2022 Thought Leadership event. And hopefully it should be an event in which we will be able to meet you in person. So stay safe and get vaccinated as soon as possible if you're not vaccinated. Thank you to all the panelists who took out their time and have really supported us during the last 2 days. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Satish. Thanks, team.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Rahul.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.